Today I will present in this video a case study for the course Ethics in Finance. I will present a case of market abuse at UBS, the case of Kweku Adoboli, a rogue trader at the Swiss bank UBS. Let me first explain the key relevant facts which explain the case, who is Kweku Adoboli and what he really did, before identifying the violations of the CFA codes of ethics that occurred in this case. I will then make recommendations to avoid this from happening again. In conclusion, I will provide 3 potential solutions, food for thought, in order to respond in the best way to some ethical and legal issues raised by the case. First of all, let's have a look into the situation of Kweku Adoboli. He was a young British trader at Swiss bank UBS in the global synthetic equities trading team in London. To all those around him, Kweku Adoboli appeared to be a man with ambitious career prospects. He worked hard and seemingly had an answer for everything, according to his colleagues. But behind his facade, Mr. Adoboli was a trader who was running completely out of control and exposing UBS to huge financial risk on a daily basis. Indeed, he was described by the police detective inspector who led the investigation as a young man who wanted all and was not willing to wait. He was considered as arrogant enough to think that the bank's rule for traders did not apply for him. Kweku Adoboli, this young trader, almost destroyed the giant UBS bank through increasingly reckless illicit deals. He has been jailed after being convicted of what the British police called the biggest fraud in the UK. This is a form of manipulation strategies. He clearly abused of his position and violated the CFA codes of ethics. I will try to understand how he became one of the biggest rogue traders of the world. So what he really did. After this short summary, let me address now the issue itself. He began his illicit deals in 2008, initially accruing substantial profits. But what constituted these illicit deals? Actually, it's about creating a secret account. He called it his umbrella, diverting the money in it, embezzling it, making illicit deals and hiding it from the regular books. Mr. Adoboli used it to conceal the extent of risk he was taking and the losses he incurred. This umbrella account served 2 distinct and specific purposes. Firstly, it was a cash buffer, which allowed for the smoothing of the results on the exchange trading funds desk on which Mr. Adoboli worked. The exchange trade funds are sophisticated derivatives speculating on the market developments and evolution. And secondly, the umbrella was a reference to trades that did not show in the desk management information. In other words, profit and losses generated by these trades and the risk they posed to the bank were not reported. However, in summer 2011, European markets hit turmoil, so the trades began to make a loss, which he desperately attempted to recoup with even bigger pans. He entered into a vicious circle. So he is guilty of banking fraud, the fact that he obtains money illegally from a financial institution, for example, it's clearly a criminal offense. But it doesn't stop there. As a matter of fact, Kweku Adoboli is what we call the rogue trader. The principle is that he is a trader, so he is authorized to make trades, but he used his position in order to make unauthorized trades. That's the basic principle. Mr. Adoboli was not doing simple financial trading, but unapproved financial transaction. There are many problems caused by this fraudulent way of act. On the one hand, he abused of his position, and on the other hand, he did this on behalf of his employer, so without any permission. The acts of Kweku Adoboli were called by UBS as strictly unauthorized and fictitious trades that violated the UBS risk limits. At this stage, we have to make a clear distinction. Here, in the case of a rogue trader, the key factor is the lack of authorization, as already said. It's really the key word. Nevertheless, there have been colossal financial losses and bankruptcies from what are considered to be catastrophically bad decisions by senior decision makers in financial institutions. For instance, the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers caused huge losses. But this is not described as rogue trading, which is not punishable. To cut this long story short, Kweku Adoboli was sentenced to 7 years in prison because of fraud by abuse of position. He was charged with false accounting too, but the jury found him not guilty of these charges. This was the UK biggest fraud committed by one of the most sophisticated fraudsters the City of London police has ever come across. Let me now identify the violations. This case violates clearly the first standard of the Codes of Ethics, professionalism. First of all, the knowledge of the law part. Indeed, he does not comply with the laws, neither with the rules of the company. Secondly, the part about the independence and objectivity. Here, it is not relating to gift, but it doesn't reveal a reasonable care and judgment to achieve and maintain independence and objectivity in professional activities. The reason is that he clearly bows to pressure, the result pressure, by issuing good results, but only superficially in order to increase his salary and bonus. This word superficially leads us to think about the standard 1C, misrepresentation, because Kweku Adoboli clearly makes misrepresentations relating to his actions in his professional activity. Finally, he particularly violates the part of misconduct, the most basic. Indeed, Kweku Adoboli was clearly engaged in a professional conduct involving dishonesty and fraud, concerning namely his employer, but the whole company as well. It's absolutely not honest act. This kind of position abuse damaged his reputation, but also the reputation of the Swiss bank UBS as a whole. What we call the mummy rule was totally not respected, because what he committed reflects adversely on professional reputation, integrity and competences. What about the standard 2, integrity of capital market? Let's have a look at the part B, which is the market manipulation. In fact, it's almost the definition of the acts of Kweku Adoboli. Indeed, he was engaged in practices in order to inflate the results and mislead all the market participants. The distribution of false and misleading information is a violation of the standard 1B. As far as the standard 4 duties to employer is concerned, this standard is also clearly violated. As a matter of fact, Kweku didn't show any loyalty with regard to his employer and the others employees in the bank, who will endure and suffer from the consequences of the unethical and illegal acts of who we call the rogue trader of UBS. This represents a violation of the first part of the standards, loyalty. Indeed, he did not act in the best interest of his employer. It's called whistleblowing. We saw in class that whistleblowing can be used only if some reason are respected, and it's absolutely not the case here. At this stage, we need to make a precision concerning the case itself. There is 3 traders in the team of Kweku Adoboli and the direct manager of his team: John Greenidge, Kweku Adoboli, John Hughes, Simon Taylor, and Christophe Bertrand. Ron Greenidge was not aware of this. He didn't know about all this scandal. However, Kweku was not the only one to know the existence of this famous umbrella account and to use it. For instance, John Hughes, one of the colleagues of Kweku, confessed to the judge on the 3rd day of the trial that he knew about this umbrella account, which he used to dissimulate losses and unauthorized transactions. He even declared that he had recourse to this account himself for at least 5 transactions during the Kweku's holiday in Greece in 2011. Simon Taylor and Christophe Bertrand were the 2 other junior colleagues of the raw trader. Some accusations imply Taylor because of email exchanges about this umbrella account. As far as Christophe Bertrand is concerned, he had no implication. The Standard 1 points out that inaction may be construed as participation and then as a violation of the code and of the law. On the one hand, if there is any suspicion, the member, in this case the colleagues, has to notify compliance. And on the other hand, if there is any certainty, he has to notify to the supervisor directly. In this standard, one of the most important rules is not to bow to pressure. As far as the Standard 5 investment analysis recommendations and actions is concerned, Kweku Adoboli obviously does not respect the code of ethics. As a matter of fact, Mr. Adoboli does not exercise diligence, independence, and thoroughness in taking investment action. And it's the first part of this standard about diligence and reasonable basis. The evidence is of course on this umbrella account. Moreover, the second part of this standard, communication, is again clearly violated. Kweku Adoboli does not disclose the required information about his investments, his changes in investment that may affect, and it does in this case, those processes materially. He should use a reasonable judgment, but fails in doing this. Every time, his employer had to have an indication of the potential losses of his activities. Kweku Adoboli had to communicate potential gains and losses on the investments. The Standard 6, conflict of interest. A gray area remains about conflict of interest, and we will probably never know. Nevertheless, we can affirm that Kweku faced conflict of interest because there are pressures that influence his decisions, the search, the pursuit of profit, for example, and he does not fully disclose it to his employer. In the priority of the transactions, there must be a hierarchy of interest in the market, which begins with the clients, then the public as a whole, integrity of the market, then the interest of the employer, and only then you. So Kweku Adoboli does not respect this classification. Investment transactions for clients' employers have priority over personal transactions. This sentence illustrates perfectly the situation of Kweku Adoboli. To conclude this part of the video, the UBS case outlines how individual ambition can lead to consistent unethical behavior resulting in a crippling loss at a large investment bank. The UBS case highlights how quickly internal controls and ethical concerns can be overlooked. And this case also highlights how weak corporate culture and unclear organizational structure can facilitate unethical behavior. Let me now formulate some recommendations. To introduce this part, let me read a part of an interview of an investor banker by James T. Wood for the New York Times. The problem is not the culture, one of them told me. The problem is that there wasn't any culture. There are silos, everyone is separate, people cut their own deals, and it's every man for himself. A lot of people made a lot of money that way, and it fueled jealousies and effort to get ever better deals. People thought of themselves first, and then maybe the bank, if they thought about it at all. The problems at UBS are not inadequate risk controls, which Mr. Adoboli brazenly circumvented, or lack of regulations, which did not stop other UBS executives from skirting the law. So we have to question ourselves about the way of controlling risk taken by traders. Is there a lack of regulation or not? The culture of UBS is appropriated or not in order to inculcate ethical behavior in the employees? So I will go through different recommendations in order to overcome the violations done by Kweku Adoboli. First and foremost, In order to overcome the violations of the first standard, UBS should regularly review written compliance procedures, but to have a better impact on the employees, the company has to distribute information internally on applicable laws and regulations, disseminate a list of potential violations, and tell about the potential and associated disciplinary sanctions. This one is very important, I think, in order to bring an electroshock about for people who are on the wrong side and need the violations. They would think twice about it before acting in violation with the code of ethics if they have been more aware of the rules and above all the sanctions. Encourage reporting violations can help to stop the spiral and the chain of unethical events. Indeed, if one of Kweku's Adoboli's colleagues has told something to the superiors, some losses could have been avoided. For this, the company should ensure that every employee adheres and adopts the Code of Ethics of UBS. The idea here is to discourage employees get into a downward and vicious spiral, and also to stop the spiral if it's unfortunately started. In order to get around the violations of the second standard and the Code of Ethics in general, UBS should make an update of simply a check of the efficacy of the control system. The aim is, for example, to see if the employee trades are reviewed by someone, if yes, by whom. It will be then easier to detect misbehavior regarding some trades, some investments, abnormality in some activities. However, I will explain in details later that the core of the problem does not come from the inadequacy or incompetency of the risk controls, but a review of it can be useful and represent part of the improvement. Indeed, if we make some small improvements at several levels, it would lead to a more robust and ethical company. What about the recommendations concerning the employers? It is related to the distributions of procedures and periodical update again, a continuous education for the staff, and the review of the employee actions on a regular basis as well. So we saw the recommended procedures, links to the violated standards, and we can now formulate 3 general recommendations, 3 potential solutions in order to conclude this video. The first one about the compensation system, the second one about the UBS culture, and the last one about the regulations and the risk control system. Financial institutions, and in this case UBS, need to review and perhaps restructure their compensation systems so that ethical behavior, good judgment and solid decision-making process are rewarded and not just outcomes alone. Indeed, we saw that Kweku Adoboli lost his temper because he always wanted to make more money. He was obsessed. Consequently, I pertinently believe that a reorganization of this compensation system about bonuses is important and necessary. Top managers need to ask themselves, what type of behavior do we want our employees to exhibit? And how does our compensation system encourage or motivate this behavior? It is the starting point. As we already noticed, there is a problem concerning the company's culture, the UBS culture. The organizations must promote an internal culture that recognizes the role of situational influences. Indeed, what about this recommendation? It concerns all the recommendations regarding the violation of the Standard 1 particularly. The aim is to avoid situations and people who made bad decisions, lost their moral bearings, and got caught in the cycle that they didn't know how to break. I'm convinced that the circumstances in which we find ourselves as Kweku Adoboli have more to do with the decisions we make and we take than our basic character traits. Rogue trading does not happen to sinister people with sinister intentions. On the contrary, it is also generally performed by ordinary people. And this is what I mean by ordinary people. The root of the problem lies here. In the sentence in the part of the interview I read before, everyone is separate, people got their own deals, it's every man for himself. A lot of people made a lot of money, people thought of themselves first and then maybe to the bank. So the root of the problems lies here, in this lack of culture or this unappropriated culture. What about the third solutions? I don't think that there is a lack of regulations, but I'm convinced that an update or a review of the risk control system and the internal regulations would contribute to consolidate, to strengthen the company. This is not the root of the problem, but it contributes to the definite improvement. Thank you very much for your attention during this video.